What I would personally want to see, though, is Splatoon 4 reworking Cooler into some kind of brand new mechanic. I'm not entirely sure how this would work, and maybe that's something I'd have to talk about for another time, but well, that was almost a year and a half ago, but better late than never. With some help from my community, let me tell you how Tacticooler can be better in Splatoon 4. But first, why do this, and what makes Cooler so important? Splatoon has always had some kind of team special to try to deal with faster kill times or full team wipes. In Splatoon 1, this was Bubbler, a chainable barrier that ended up being way too broken because full invincibility really isn't a good idea. So in Splatoon 2, this was toned back to form Ink Armor, a chainable protection special that let you tank one shot regardless of damage. Except if it dealt under 30 damage, then you could take 2 shots. While this was less broken design-wise, it created an option that unfairly biased only a few weapon classes in the game, those that had faster fire rates, while pretty much anything slower like rollers, chargers, or blasters suffered way too much. So it ended up being one of the game's most hated specials, and we're once again going back to the drawing board. Tacticooler was Splatoon 3's much more creative solution. Rather than stop the kills from happening, they reduced the penalty for those who got taken out. Tacticooler gives a lot of fun mobility buffs to use, but most importantly drastically reduces the penalty of death with quick respawn and special saber. This keeps players who do get killed to be able to come back into the action without being out of the fight too much or losing too much of their special, while still rewarding picks equally across a variety of different weapons. This has ended up being what worked, and it only got better at higher ranks where it kept the games focused on pushing forward and being more aggressive, which helped a lot with Splatoon's naturally faster pacing. In addition to this, the drink stand Tacticooler puts out also provides a good bit of counterplay options and interesting decision making, since players are forced to clump up in a very small location that can be punished by opponents. Over the past few years, Tacticooler has become a staple of this series. However, while this role is essential, I think it being a normal special does have some big problems that need to be fixed. In Splatoon 1 and 2, there were much less specials in the game, so rolling the protection one wasn't a big deal. Now though, there's only 7 weapons with the Tacticooler out of 19 total specials, making the odds that you're going to have one consistently in your lobbies quite low. On top of that, while using the buffs is fun, being responsible for Tacticooler with how important it is isn't. It takes away the feeling of having a more impactful special and creates a lot of moments where you really have to make sure you don't die and therefore have less cooler output. And at especially high levels of play, it's a near mandatory option in team comps, meaning one weapon in a team composition is going to be just one of 7 weapons at best. When turning this into a mechanic, there were a lot of ideas that failed quite early and showed just how many pitfalls there can be when doing this. So let's go over some of the failed ideas and design issues I wanted to avoid, to give a bit better context as to what I'm trying to go for. First off, I wanted to avoid the mechanic becoming too complex. This should be something that's mostly out of the way of normal gameplay that could be easy for people of any level to understand. One idea that immediately clashed too heavily with this was having players farm some form of individual cooler meter in addition to their own special. While issues like balancing the proper output could be fixed, having to manage 2 individual special gauges and activate each one at the right time was definitely too much to keep track of, especially given the different methods of charging each one. Maybe this could have been simplified by having your own special also trigger a cooler effect for you as an individual, but that very heavily favored weapons like Aerospray that could spam their specials quite heavily, and lacked meaningful counterplay for opponents to be able to prevent you getting these buffs. Another similar option to this was just allowing anyone to replace their special with a Tacticooler, which is something I really liked originally since it allows anyone to use it. However, there's pretty much no good way to determine who should be the designated cooler player for each comp. How would you even assign that? A voting period would add more time to every game, you could potentially force someone on a special they don't want, and there could just be ties in voting, something you couldn't easily solve because how would you determine who should get it then? You can't do it off of something like paint because you can pick the exact same weapon. It just creates problem after problem. Even tying Tacticooler to something like the objective has too many potential complications and concerns for snowballing the game's favor for one team or the other, especially given how powerful of a buff it is. So that was ruled out as well. This left only one major idea that showed some promise, and that is a team-wide special gauge. This would be charged just like a normal special, with the only difference being that it takes into account the turf inked by your entire team, which would allow it to be filled naturally just like charging your own specials without any needless complications. complications. This special could also just simply activate when charged, and after the 10-second cooldown, allow the team to start refilling it. This has one big problem though. How on earth would activating this special even work? The simplest answer would be having the buffs just chained to each player as soon as it's activated, and while that is the simplest, it has the problem of removing a lot of the counterplay and interesting decision making around grabbing the Tacticooler buff. This also would force every player on the team to get the Tacticooler at once, which has some problems. For example, what happens if someone's dead when the meter is charged? Do they just get it on their respawn? It's unsure how you would balance that. So it became clear there needed to be an actual stand location, which also had a lot of problems. You can't exactly have one player be responsible for a team special, because how would you decide what player would be in charge of that? That could create a whole host of problems. So maybe it should just automatically spawn somewhere, but where? The game state changes constantly, so you can never tell what part of the map a team is going to be on. The objective might help with some mode-specific positioning, but there are other modes like Turf War that have no central objective. The best idea seems to be trying to spawn it in the middle of all 4 players based on their location, but what if there's some really mobile weapon doing a big flank? If you have a wiper across the stage doing something, that would radically mess up where the central position would be with all your teammates, which doesn't seem fair at all. So what if we solve this problem by sidestepping it entirely? What if instead of having to worry about spawning the Tacticooler in just the right location, it had multiple spawn spots, predetermined by the map? This not only gets around our main issue, but it allows for a lot of creativity. Stages having set cooler locations would be something similar to Overwatch having set health pack locations. The only difference is that these would just be active depending on when the special meter is charged instead. You could probably easily see this on certain stages, and I think there's a very clear option for that. And that's a vending machine. We've seen these in a few Splatoon stages, including as early as Splatoon 1. They naturally fit in with the geometry and could allow players to climb or stand on top of them. You could also very easily tuck them in something like a wall, allowing them to be placed relatively freely based on what the devs think are fair positions to grab it. Probably one closer to your spawn, one in between that and the objective, one on the objective, something like that. As for more design with these, when the special is activated, you could have the same Tacticooler jingle sound that plays, but it would now have the stands glow and activate for 10 seconds. They could just be illuminated in your team's ink color. And if both teams activate it, you could just have them be in both teams' color. That'd be a very clear indicator that the stands are active, and the players would then have that 10-second cooldown to be able to go by and grab a drink. To me, the best part about this is that this mechanic is now super customizable. You can reduce the grab range down, since obviously there are multiple stands now. You could mess with the duration and the cooldown to determine how long you want people to be able to grab the drinks and how long until you can farm your next one. You could mess around with where exactly these stands get placed across the stages. You could change how many points for special you need to fill the gauge, and you could even make a brand new ability to increase the duration of the buff you would get, similar to its current special power effect. These are plenty of tools for the devs to be able to find the exact right balance for this mechanic, while it would also blend into the game naturally. It's super easy for new players to understand, it doesn't overcomplicate the gameplay in any way, and it's a great way to make an already useful special even better and allow everyone to fully utilize it. By the way, a lot of the brainstorming with this video was done with chat. You can check out the second channel video in the description if you want to see more of that process. So that's how I would implement Tacticooler as a game mechanic into Splatoon 4. Let me know what you guys think of this in the comments below, and if you want more Splatoon 4 content, check out this video on a perk system. I'll see you all next time.